The first guard reached for his gun when Evelyn Hart pushed open the mahogany doors. The second bared his teeth. The third began to shift. Bones cracked beneath an expensive black suit. Golden eyes ignited across the boardroom. Dozens of enormous men turned toward the young woman standing in the doorway, their collective hostility rolling through the room like an approaching explosion. Evelyn did not stop. She crossed the polished floor in sharp black heels, carrying a laptop beneath one arm and a binder thick enough to qualify as a blunt weapon beneath the other. Her pale blonde hair was twisted into a severe knot. Her charcoal suit fit her elegant figure with ruthless precision. She was stunningly beautiful, but there was nothing soft about the expression on her face. She reached the center of the table. Then she dropped the binder. The impact sounded like a gunshot. Several armed men flinched. Evelyn clicked her pen. If you gentlemen do not produce your third quarter expense receipts by 5 o'clock this afternoon, every person in this room is going to federal prison for tax evasion. Silence swallowed the boardroom. A scarred man on the left slowly lowered the pistol he had been pointing at her chest. Another man glanced toward the head of the table, apparently waiting for permission to kill her. Evelyn opened the binder. Let us begin with vehicle expenditures. At the far end of the room, Roman Vale sat in a high-backed leather chair that resembled a throne. He was 6 feet 4 inches of controlled violence, wrapped in an immaculate dark suit. His shoulders were broad enough to strain the fabric. His hands rested on the table, relaxed but powerful, each finger capable of breaking bone with very little effort. A faint scar crossed his right eyebrow, sharpening the hard symmetry of his face. Roman was the alpha king of Obsidian City. He controlled the docks, the private security networks, the underground trade routes, and every werewolf syndicate operating beneath the city's glass towers. Men twice Evelyn's size had begged at his feet. Rival alphas had surrendered territory after hearing his name whispered over encrypted calls. No one entered his boardroom without permission. No one interrupted his counsel. No one told him he needed receipts. Roman studied Evelyn with the cold stillness of a predator evaluating prey. She pulled out a color-coded tab. Shadow Logistics claimed 980,000 crowns in fleet maintenance during the third quarter. Roman said nothing. Evelyn looked up. Who approved that figure? Every man at the table stared at the binder. One of Roman's lieutenants, a massive dark-haired wolf named Mercer, cleared his throat. Fleet maintenance is handled by operations. Who runs operations? Mercer looked toward the man beside him. That man looked toward the ceiling. Evelyn followed their line of avoidance until her gaze landed on a thick-necked enforcer with blood on his cuff. You, she said. The enforcer blinked. Me? What is your name? Briggs. Briggs, did you authorize 980,000 crowns in vehicle maintenance? His eyes narrowed. I authorize many things. That was not my question. A low growl vibrated from his chest. Evelyn waited. The growl faded. Briggs shifted in his chair. Maybe. Excellent. Where are the invoices? The what? The invoices. The documents issued by vendors showing what services were performed, how much they cost, when they were completed, and who received payment. Briggs looked offended. You think I don't know what an invoice is? I think you claimed nearly 1 million crowns in maintenance costs without attaching a single one. We maintain a large fleet. How large? He hesitated. Large. How many vehicles? Many. Evelyn stared at him. Briggs folded his arms. 37. She turned a page. Shadow Logistics has 12 registered commercial vehicles. The room went still again. Briggs looked at Mercer. Mercer looked at Roman. Roman continued watching Evelyn. She tapped the binder with her pen. Would anyone like to explain the other 25? No one spoke. Evelyn sighed. Are they unregistered? Silence. Armored? More silence. Used for criminal activity? A few men shifted. Do not answer that, Roman said. His voice was deep, quiet, and edged with alpha command. The windows trembled. Every wolf in the room lowered his head by instinct. Evelyn turned toward him. For the first time since entering, she gave Roman her full attention. He saw intelligence in her gray-blue eyes. Not reckless courage, not ignorance. Calculation. She had assessed every weapon, every exit, and every hostile face before reaching the table. She understood exactly where she was. She simply considered the federal tax authority more dangerous than everyone in the room combined. Roman leaned back. Miss Hart. Miss Hart? His gaze hardened. Evelyn clicked her pen again. Miss is a social designation. Miss is professionally neutral. You hired me in a professional capacity. I did not hire you. Your attorneys did. My attorneys have made a mistake. Your attorneys are the only reason the federal tax authority has not frozen every account connected to Shadow Logistics. A murmur moved through the table. Roman's eyes flashed gold. The air changed. His alpha presence surged outward, dense and suffocating. It pressed against every body in the room. Several wolves bowed their heads lower. One guard took an involuntary step backward. Evelyn's breathing did not change. Roman rose. The movement revealed the full scale of him. He towered over the table, a dark, brutally handsome figure, radiating enough dominance to force lesser wolves to their knees. Evelyn remained standing in her heels, her head barely reaching his shoulder. Roman placed both hands on the table. You will adjust the figures. No. You will make the accounts acceptable. That is what I am attempting to do. You will do it without disrupting my organization. Your organization reported a warehouse as a charitable youth center. It supports the community. It contains ammunition, reinforced holding cells, and 6 industrial freezers. The freezers store food. The inspection photographs show blood drains in the floor. Roman's jaw tightened. Evelyn turned another page. You also deducted 42,000 crowns for ceremonial silver restraints. A man near the windows muttered, Those were necessary. She looked at him. For what? He opened his mouth. Roman's glare stopped him. Evelyn wrote something in the margin. Personal entertainment, non-deductible. They were not entertainment, the man protested. Then provide a business purpose. The man's face reddened. There was a traitor. Did restraining the traitor generate taxable revenue? No. Did it preserve an income-producing asset? No. Was the traitor an employee? Technically. Was the restraint part of an approved disciplinary policy? The man frowned. We threw him into the river. Evelyn paused. She drew a line through the expense. Definitely non-deductible. Mercer covered a cough with his fist. Roman looked at him. Mercer immediately became expressionless. Evelyn moved to the next tab. Now, executive travel. Roman's hand closed around the back of his chair. Enough! We have not reached meals and entertainment. Miss Hart! Correct. You are learning. A strangled sound came from Briggs. Roman slowly walked around the table. Predators reacted to movement, and every wolf tracked him as he approached Evelyn. His footsteps were measured. Deliberate. The muscles beneath his suit shifted with lethal grace. He stopped inches from her. Up close, Roman expected some sign of fear. A quickened pulse, dilated pupils, the faint chemical scent of panic. Instead, he smelled cool rain, clean paper, and something subtly sweet beneath her perfume. Evelyn looked up at him. Her pulse was elevated, but not from terror. Annoyance. She was annoyed with him. Roman lowered his voice. Do you understand who I am? Yes, and yet you walked into this room alone. I had an appointment. You threatened my counsel with prison. I explained the probable consequences of inadequate documentation. You accused my men of tax fraud. No. Fraud requires intent. At this stage, I am still determining whether they are criminals or merely incompetent. Several heads turned toward Briggs. He pointed at himself. Why is everyone looking at me? Roman's presence intensified. The pressure in the room became nearly physical. A glass cracked near Mercer's hand. Claws emerged from Roman's fingertips, pressing into the leather chair behind Evelyn. She looked down at them. Then she looked back at him. "Do you intend to damage that chair?" Roman stared at her. "Because it is a capital asset," she continued, "and I will not approve a replacement deduction if the damage is caused by an executive tantrum." Someone choked. Roman turned his head. Every man at the table became fascinated by the wood grain. He returned his attention to Evelyn. "You believe you can speak to me this way because the government protects you." "The government does not know I am here." That answer disturbed him more than fear would have. "Your firm has no record of this meeting?" "I own my firm. Apex Consulting reports to me." "You came to a syndicate headquarters without telling anyone." "I told my assistant I was meeting an uncooperative client." Roman leaned closer. "That was foolish." "No. Failing to reconcile accounts after receiving a final enforcement warning was foolish. Claiming suppressors as workplace safety equipment was foolish. Listing bribes under community outreach was exceptionally foolish." Briggs looked toward Mercer. "I said we should call them consulting fees." Evelyn pointed her pen at him. "Do not make it worse." Briggs closed his mouth. Roman's claws retracted. He had frightened politicians, judges, commanders, and rival kings. He had once ended a territorial rebellion by walking into a warehouse and allowing the rebels to smell his rage. This woman was correcting his expense classifications. "Why not forge the numbers?" he asked. Evelyn's expression changed. Not much, just a slight narrowing of her eyes. But the room seemed colder. Because fabricated entries would create an audit trail inconsistent with bank disbursements, vendor reporting, payroll records, inventory movements, and beneficial ownership disclosures. Any competent examiner would identify the variance, expand the scope, subpoena the underlying records, pierce the corporate structure, and refer the matter for criminal prosecution. Roman said nothing. She continued. "Your retained earnings do not reconcile with your stated operating margins. Your accounts payable ledger contains recurring round number transfers to shell entities with no identifiable service contracts. Your fuel consumption exceeds your registered fleet capacity by 260%. Your depreciation schedule includes assets that do not officially exist. And someone categorized 12 military-grade communication systems as office telephones." A man at the opposite end of the table quietly slid his phone into his pocket. Evelyn's gaze snapped toward him. "Was that you?" "No. You moved too quickly." He froze. She turned back to Roman. "Forging the final figures would not solve your problem. It would convert negligent bookkeeping into provable conspiracy." Roman absorbed the barrage in silence. He understood threats. He understood territory. He understood the precise amount of force needed to make a rival surrender without creating a martyr. He did not understand beneficial ownership disclosures. Evelyn stepped around him, returned to the binder, and removed a stack of forms. "I have prepared individual document requests." Mercer cautiously raised a hand. Roman looked at him in disbelief. Mercer lowered it, then reconsidered. "What kind of documents?" "Receipts, contracts, mileage logs, payroll records, proof of payment, inventory reports, and explanations for all expenditures above 10,000 crowns." The men stared at the forms as if she had distributed death warrants. Briggs picked up his packet. "This is 14 pages. Yours is 19. The remaining 5 pages are attached." His face went pale. Another lieutenant flipped through his documents. "You want records for meals?" "Yes." "What if the meal was confidential? The names of attendees may be redacted pending legal review, but the date, location, amount, and legitimate business purpose must be supplied. What if the business purpose was deciding who to eliminate? Non-deductible. What if the elimination reduced operating costs?" Evelyn considered him for 1 second. "Still non-deductible." Roman heard Mercer cough again. This time it sounded suspiciously like laughter. Evelyn began assigning deadlines. Operations will deliver vehicle records by 3. Security will provide payroll classifications by 4. Procurement will explain why it purchased 900 gallons of industrial bleach during a 6-week period. A bald man near Roman's chair frowned. "Cleaning. Then you will have no difficulty producing sanitation logs." His frown deepened. Executive management will remain here, Evelyn said. Roman's eyebrows rose. Executive management? You! The entire boardroom became silent enough to hear the ventilation system. Evelyn opened her laptop and rotated it toward the empty chair beside her. You are going to explain each of these transactions. I have people for that. Your people think a ransom payment belongs under customer retention. It retained the customer. That is not how accounting works. It achieved the stated result. It also violated 6 reporting standards. Roman looked at the laptop as though it were an explosive device. Evelyn pulled out the chair. No one in the room breathed. The most feared alpha in Obsidian City stood beside a 26-year-old auditor who had just ordered him to sit down. A low growl rolled through his chest. Evelyn checked her watch. Every minute you waste increases my fee. Roman's growl stopped. How much is your fee? 800 crowns per hour, Briggs whispered. That is robbery. Evelyn looked at him. Your ledger contains 17 payments to a man identified only as Bonesaw. Briggs folded his arms. He is a specialist. So am I. Roman stared at her for a long moment. Then, to the astonishment of every armed wolf in the room, the Alpha King pulled out the chair and sat. Evelyn placed the first transaction on the screen. 36,000 crowns transferred to Black Hollow Fabrication. Business purpose? Roman glanced at Mercer. Evelyn blocked his view with the binder. No assistance. Roman's eyes narrowed. Equipment. What kind? Specialized equipment. That answer would embarrass a foolish intern. The corner of Mercer's mouth twitched. Roman turned toward him. Mercer studied his packet with sudden devotion. Evelyn leaned closer to the laptop. A strand of blonde hair slipped free near her cheek. Roman caught the faint scent of rain again, bright and clean against the gun oil and aggression filling the room. Something inside him shifted. Not his wolf, not fully, but the beast had stopped demanding that she submit. Now it wanted her attention. All of it. Evelyn tapped the screen. What did you purchase? Roman looked at the transaction. Then at the woman who had invaded his headquarters, insulted his counsel, challenged his authority, and made him sit down using nothing but an hourly billing rate. Reinforced transport compartments, he said. For legal cargo? A pause. For cargo. Evelyn typed. Roman watched her fingers move across the keyboard. Around them, lethal men began gathering receipts with the urgency of soldiers preparing for war. Phones appeared. Orders were issued. Assistants were summoned. Somewhere outside the boardroom, a terrified employee sprinted toward the archives. Evelyn moved to the next line. Roman should have ended the meeting. Instead, he found himself wondering what it would take to make her look at him with something other than professional disappointment. Next transaction, she said. 82,000 crowns for emergency structural repairs. There was an explosion. Accidental? No. Was the property insured? Roman hesitated. Evelyn slowly turned her head. His most dangerous men watched their Alpha King face a question none of them would have dared ask. Roman cleared his throat. We may have missed a premium. Evelyn closed her eyes. For the first time, true emotion cracked her composure. It was not fear. It was pain. Deep, personal, financial pain. When she opened her eyes again, Roman felt the strange and immediate certainty that whoever had allowed the insurance policy to lapse was about to suffer more under her audit than they ever could beneath his claws. Who, Evelyn asked softly, was responsible for renewing it? Every man in the room pointed at Briggs. Briggs looked around in betrayal. Roman leaned back in his chair. Evelyn opened a new document. And for the first time in his reign, the Alpha King smiled while one of his lieutenants begged for mercy. Briggs survived the insurance interrogation, but only because Evelyn decided killing him would complicate payroll. By 8 the next morning, the headquarters of Shadow Logistics no longer resembled the command center of Obsidian City's most dangerous criminal syndicate. It resembled an accounting firm under martial law. Color-coded notices covered the walls. Red folders marked urgent compliance risks. Yellow folders contained incomplete documentation. Green folders held transactions Evelyn had reluctantly approved after verifying them against bank records, vendor statements, inventory reports, and the increasingly unreliable testimony of armed werewolves. A whiteboard had appeared outside the boardroom. At the top, Evelyn had written, "Documents required before funds release." Beneath it were 47 names. Briggs's name appeared 3 times. The syndicate's petty cash accounts had been frozen at 7:32 that morning. Its discretionary weapons budget had followed 11 minutes later. By 8:15, Evelyn had suspended all reimbursements that lacked itemized receipts, legitimate business purposes, and approval from a department head who could explain the expense without using the phrases operational necessity, complicated situation, or you do not want to know. The results were catastrophic. A group of heavily armed assassins stood around the headquarters cafeteria, staring at an empty vending machine. One of them pressed the button for black coffee. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. The machine remained dark. "Finance disconnected it," another assassin said. The first man slowly turned. Why? Unexplained electricity consumption. The assassin looked down at the pistol beneath his jacket, then back at the machine. "Can we threaten someone?" "No." She issued a conduct memorandum. Across the room, Mercer was reading that memorandum with the grim concentration of a commander studying enemy battle plans. "Threats against finance personnel will result in disciplinary action," he read aloud. "Intimidation does not constitute supporting documentation. Growling during reimbursement reviews will be interpreted as non-cooperation." Briggs leaned over his shoulder. "Does it say anything about biting?" Mercer turned the page. "Yes," Briggs cursed. At 9 sharp, Evelyn emerged from the temporary office she had established beside Roman's boardroom. It had previously been used to store surveillance equipment, confiscated weapons, and 3 crates of unregistered currency. She had removed all of it before sunrise. No one knew where the currency had gone. Everyone was afraid to ask. Evelyn crossed the corridor carrying a tablet and a cup of coffee she had purchased with her own money. The assassins straightened as she passed. She stopped. Their shoulders tightened. "Why are 7 of you standing here?" she asked. No one answered. Evelyn looked at the empty vending machine, then at them. "Are you on break?" A tall enforcer with a scar across his throat cleared it carefully. "We were told there is no coffee. There is coffee in the kitchen. The machine is off. The kitchen has a coffee maker." The men exchanged uneasy glances. The scarred enforcer spoke again. "Who operates it?" "You do." He stared at her. Evelyn stared back. "We are field specialists," he said at last. "You are adults. We have never made coffee. You routinely infiltrate fortified buildings. That is different. You track targets through crowded urban districts. Yes, you can assemble precision rifles in darkness. Of course. Then I am confident you can measure ground coffee and press a button." The assassin looked toward Mercer for support. Mercer studied the conduct memorandum. Evelyn checked her tablet. "Roman, Mercer, Briggs, Calder, and the head of procurement will report to my office in 10 minutes. Bring every outstanding reimbursement request." She continued down the hall. The scarred assassin watched her go. "Does anyone know how much coffee goes in the machine?" Briggs lowered his voice. "Do not guess. She will audit it." 10 minutes later, Roman entered Evelyn's temporary office and discovered that she had rearranged it again. His surveillance monitors had been replaced by spreadsheets. His weapon cabinets had been relabeled as secure document storage. A printer occupied the table where his interrogation tools had once been arranged. Evelyn sat behind a metal desk, surrounded by carefully organized files. Roman's top enforcers stood before her in a reluctant line. Each man was enormous. Each carried enough concealed weaponry to overwhelm a small security force. Each had killed on Roman's orders without hesitation. None wanted to be first. Evelyn looked up. "Sit." Roman remained standing. Evelyn glanced at him. "You may stand if it helps you process disappointment." Mercer sat immediately. Briggs followed. Calder, the head of procurement, hesitated until Roman took the chair closest to Evelyn's desk. Then every other man sat as though pulled downward by the same invisible force. Evelyn opened the first folder. Monthly food expenditure. Briggs exhaled in relief. Roman heard it. Evelyn did too. Her eyes narrowed. You should not be relieved. Briggs became still. Shadow Logistics submitted reimbursement claims for 500 pounds of raw meat last month. We have a large workforce, Briggs said. You have 112 registered employees. Werewolves eat more than humans. According to your internal meal records, only 26 employees work overnight shifts. We become hungry during tactical operations. Then why was the meat delivered to the executive training facility? Briggs looked at Mercer. Mercer gave him nothing. Evelyn leaned forward. 500 pounds. Briggs spread his hands. Morale? That is not a business purpose. Nutrition? The company already provides meal allowance. Protein? The company already provides meal allowances. Cultural tradition? Evelyn closed the folder. The sound made Briggs stop speaking. Beginning today, the executive raw meat account is suspended. Calder sat forward. Suspended? Frozen? For how long? Until you implement a documented food policy with per-employee limits, authorized vendors, and monthly reconciliation. A horrified silence filled the office. Briggs looked at Roman. Alpha! Roman's gaze remained on Evelyn. She wore a white blouse beneath her dark jacket. Her blonde hair was pinned back again, but several fine strands had escaped near her temple. She looked composed, severe, and entirely unaware that she had just created more fear than Roman usually achieved through public executions. Continue, Roman said. Briggs stared at him as though betrayed by his own blood. Evelyn opened another file. Silver-plated body armor, Calder shifted. 24 sets, Evelyn said. Total cost, 360,000 crowns, categorized as office uniforms. Calder raised one finger. Technically, employees wear them while working. Employees also wear underwear while working. That does not make it an office uniform. Mercer looked down quickly. Roman saw his shoulders move once. Evelyn continued. Why silver-plated? Calder crossed his arms. Protection. Silver is toxic to your own species. Exactly. Evelyn paused. Calder leaned forward, encouraged. No werewolf expects another werewolf to wear silver armor. It creates confusion. It also creates chemical burns. We added lining? With what material? Calder hesitated. Specialized fabric. Evelyn's pen stopped. Roman recognized that expression. He had seen it immediately before she dismantled Briggs's insurance explanation. What fabric? She asked. Calder glanced toward the door. Evelyn waited. Velvet. Her face became completely blank. Calder attempted to explain. It prevents direct skin contact. You commissioned 24 suits of silver-plated tactical armor lined with velvet. They are comfortable, and classified them as office uniforms. There was no category for psychologically disruptive combat apparel. Evelyn removed her glasses. Roman had not realized she wore them only for reading until that moment. Without the dark frames, her gray-blue eyes looked brighter, sharper, more dangerous. She pinched the bridge of her nose. Claim denied. Calder's jaw dropped. All of it? All of it. That armor is essential. Then capitalize it as specialized security equipment and provide an inventory schedule, assigned user records, depreciation methodology, and evidence that it is connected to lawful operations. Calder stared. Evelyn replaced her glasses. Or pay for it personally. He looked at Roman. Roman raised one eyebrow. Calder sank back into his chair. Evelyn moved to the third folder. The men became visibly tense. This claim is for a cleanup fee totaling 148,000 crowns. No one spoke. The payment went to an entity called Quiet Night Services. Silence. There is no business registration, no tax identification number, no invoice, and no service description. Mercer folded his hands. Evelyn looked around the room. What was cleaned? Briggs examined the ceiling. Calder became interested in the printer. Mercer looked directly ahead with the discipline of a soldier resisting interrogation. Roman watched Evelyn. She tapped the claim. What was cleaned? A warehouse, Mercer said. What happened in the warehouse? An incident. What kind of incident? A large one. Evelyn's pen tightened between her fingers. What did Quiet Night Services remove? Mercer chose his words carefully. Materials. What kind of materials? Organic. Briggs closed his eyes. Evelyn looked from Mercer to Roman. Roman's mouth almost curved. She saw it. Do you find this amusing? Not yet. Did you authorize this payment? I authorized the cleanup. Without a receipt? The vendor does not provide receipts. Then the vendor does not get paid from corporate funds. They were already paid. Then the person who approved the payment will reimburse the company. Every enforcer turned toward Roman. Roman's faint amusement disappeared. Evelyn slid the claim across the desk. You approved it! The Alpha King stared at the paper as if it had challenged him to single combat. You expect me to repay 148,000 crowns. I expect you to provide documentation. There is no documentation. Then repay it. The pressure in the office changed. Roman's wolf rose beneath his skin. The printer rattled. A low growl rolled from his chest. Briggs gripped the sides of his chair. Calder lowered his head. Mercer's eyes flashed gold as his body responded to Roman's dominance. Evelyn pushed the claim 2 inches closer. Growling is not a receipt. Roman's wolf stopped. For one impossible second, no one moved. Then Mercer coughed into his fist. Roman looked at him. Mercer's expression returned to stone. Evelyn gathered the denied claims. There is another issue. Field personnel submitted an average of 300 crowns per day in meal reimbursements. Briggs frowned. They need to eat. They are buying restaurant meals 3 times a day. Fieldwork is demanding. So is budgeting. You cannot send assassins into hostile territory carrying lunchboxes. Why not? Briggs looked genuinely shocked. It damages the image. What image? The lethal one. Evelyn stood. The men instinctively leaned back. From now on, employees receiving meal allowances will not submit separate restaurant reimbursements. Anyone exceeding the daily limit will pay the difference personally. Calder looked alarmed. What are they supposed to eat? Food they can afford. We work irregular hours. Pack lunches. The phrase struck the room harder than Roman's alpha command. Briggs blinked. Pack our own lunches. Yes. Before operations? Yes. In containers? Evelyn stared at him. That is generally how packed lunches work. Mercer rubbed one hand over his mouth. Briggs turned to Roman in open desperation. You cannot allow this. Roman looked at Evelyn. Her cheeks were slightly flushed with frustration. Her posture was straight, her eyes bright, her small body radiating more authority than the armed men surrounding her. He should have been furious. Some part of him was. But beneath the anger, something hotter had begun to coil. She had invaded his organization and found weaknesses no rival had noticed. She saw every leak, every careless decision, every hidden vulnerability buried inside the sprawling machinery of his empire. Where others saw violence and power, Evelyn saw systems. And she was repairing them. Not because she feared him, not because she wanted his favor, because disorder offended her. Roman's wolf pressed forward again, but this time it did not demand submission. It wanted proximity. It wanted to remain near her desk and watch her cold eyes sharpen each time someone presented an incomplete form. It wanted to hear her voice cut through excuses. It wanted every man in the building to understand that she stood under Roman's protection, even though Evelyn would probably reject the concept as an undocumented benefit. Pack your lunches, Roman said. Briggs looked wounded. The meeting ended at 6. Evelyn did not stop working. At 8, the headquarters emptied of most administrative staff. At 9, the field teams departed. At 10, Mercer left a container of food outside Evelyn's office without explanation. She found it 20 minutes later. A handwritten note rested on top. Meal prepared from approved household funds. Evelyn examined the note, then the receipt stapled beneath it. She almost smiled. Roman watched from the doorway. You trained them quickly, he said. She opened the container. Fear is an effective management tool. You disapprove of intimidation. I disapprove of undocumented intimidation. Roman stepped inside. His jacket was gone. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms, exposing powerful muscles and a dark watch that probably cost enough to trigger another reporting threshold. Evelyn noticed. She hated that she noticed. Roman leaned against the file cabinet. You have been here for 15 hours. So have you. This is my headquarters. This is currently my audit site. His eyes moved across the room. The chaos was disappearing. Ledgers had been reconciled. Payments had been traced. Shell entities had been identified and isolated for legal review. Evelyn had built clean structures around Roman's empire, transforming years of dangerous disorder into something defensible. You could have reported us, he said. I still might, but you have not. My job is to prevent avoidable financial destruction. Roman studied her. Even for men like us, Evelyn met his gaze. Numbers do not care what kind of men you are. He stepped closer. And you? The question landed differently. The office seemed smaller after it. Evelyn set down her fork. I care whether you follow instructions. Roman moved around the desk. Her pulse accelerated. He heard it. His wolf heard it too. He stopped beside her chair, close enough for her to feel the heat of his body. He smelled like dark wood, clean fabric, and something wild that no expensive suit could conceal. You ordered my assassins to carry lunchboxes, he said. They were abusing meal reimbursements. You confiscated Briggs's company card. He tried to expense a personal hot tub as an emergency decontamination unit. You made Calder create an armor inventory. He lost 6 sets. Roman leaned down, one hand braced against the desk. Evelyn refused to move back. His face was inches from hers. And you ordered me to repay 148,000 crowns. You still owe it. A slow smile appeared on his mouth. It was not kind. It was devastating. Roman had smiled at her before, but this was different. There was hunger in it, interest, a dark, magnetic fascination that made the air between them feel charged. You are the first person in years to take something from me, he murmured. I am correcting an improper distribution. You took control of my accounts. They were mismanaged. My headquarters, also mismanaged. My men, barely manageable. His gaze dropped to her mouth. Evelyn's breath caught, almost silently. Roman heard that too. The beast inside him surged with satisfaction. He wanted to close the remaining distance. He wanted to put one hand around her waist, lift her from the chair, and discover whether her composure would finally break against his mouth. Instead, he straightened. Evelyn looked almost disappointed. The realization nearly destroyed his restraint. Roman picked up the receipt attached to Mercer's note and examined it. Properly documented, he said. For once. He placed it beside her hand. His fingers brushed hers. The contact was brief. It burned through both of them. Roman's eyes flashed gold. Evelyn went still. Neither spoke. Outside the office, somewhere deep in the headquarters, an assassin shouted that someone had stolen his labeled lunch container. Evelyn closed her eyes. Roman's smile returned. Then she stood, gathered 3 disciplinary forms, and marched toward the door. Roman followed without being asked. For the first time in his life, the Alpha King was not following a woman because she needed protection. He was following because watching her conquer his empire had become the most dangerous pleasure he had ever known. The assassin shouting about the stolen lunch container was still alive 3 weeks later, which Evelyn considered proof that administrative discipline worked. The lunch thief had been identified through security footage, forced to reimburse the owner, and assigned a mandatory seminar titled Respecting Shared Refrigeration Assets. Roman had objected only to the seminar's 90-minute duration. Evelyn had responded by adding a quiz. After that, no one touched another employee's food. By the final night before the tax filing deadline, Shadow Logistics had become almost unrecognizable. The headquarters still contained hidden armories, reinforced corridors, encrypted command centers, and enough armed werewolves to invade a small country. But it also contained labeled filing cabinets, approved vendor lists, documented procurement procedures, and a break room refrigerator divided into clearly marked shelves. Briggs now carried his lunch in a black insulated container with a skull printed on the side. Calder had completed the armor inventory. Mercer had begun attaching receipts to expense reports without being threatened. Roman had repaid the company 148,000 crowns for the undocumented cleanup fee. He had transferred the money at 2 a.m, then sent Evelyn a confirmation message consisting of 3 words. Paid. Stop asking. She had replied with 1. Received. Roman had stared at that word for 10 minutes. Now midnight approached, and Evelyn sat alone in her temporary office beneath the cold light of 3 monitors, performing the final calculations that would determine whether Roman's empire survived the federal tax authority's deadline. Her jacket hung over the back of her chair. The sleeves of her white blouse were rolled to her elbows. Her blonde hair had fallen loose from its knot and now framed her face in soft, disobedient waves. Roman stood in the doorway watching her. He had been doing that more often. Evelyn knew. She simply refused to acknowledge it. Your taxable income is still too high, she said without looking away from the spreadsheet. Roman entered the office. Most people consider high income desirable. Most people do not conceal half of it behind shell entities managed by men named Fang and Knuckles. Those are professional names. Those are warning signs. He approached her desk and set down a cup of coffee. Evelyn glanced at it. There was a receipt beneath the cup. She looked up at him. Roman's dark suit fit his enormous frame with brutal elegance. His black hair was swept back from his face, and the scar across his eyebrow caught the monitor light. He looked as though he belonged on a throne built from the bones of his enemies. Instead, he had brought her documented coffee. Acceptable? He asked. She checked the receipt. Personal purchase. No reimbursement requested. I am learning. Slowly. Roman's mouth curved. Evelyn returned to the spreadsheet before she could react to the effect of that expression. We have legitimate deductions for fleet repairs, security equipment, warehouse depreciation, employee compensation, and verified operating losses, she said. But even after correcting the overstated revenue entries and removing your incompetent classifications, Shadow Logistics still owes more than 9 million crowns. Roman leaned against the desk. Pay it. That is an option. You dislike that option. I dislike avoidable taxation. His eyes darkened with amusement. You say taxation as though it is a blood disease. Blood diseases have treatment protocols. Roman folded his arms. How much time do you need? The filing must be transmitted before midnight tomorrow. I need 6 uninterrupted hours to complete the schedules, verify the loss carry-forwards, and perform a final reconciliation. You will have them. Evelyn looked at him. That sounded like a threat. It was a promise. The distinction sent a warm, unwelcome current through her. She turned back to the monitor. Roman remained beside her for another moment, his presence filling the office with heat and restrained danger. Then every light in the headquarters went out. Darkness slammed across the room. A second later, the east wall exploded. The blast struck with enough force to throw Evelyn from her chair. Glass erupted inward. Metal screamed. The monitors flew from the desk as the window shattered into thousands of glittering fragments. Evelyn hit the floor behind a filing cabinet, one arm shielding her head. Gunfire tore through the corridor. Not scattered shots, automatic fire. The headquarters alarms began howling. Red emergency lights flashed to life, bathing the room in violent pulses. Roman was already moving. He crossed the space between them before the debris finished falling, seized the overturned desk, and threw it against the exposed window as a shield. Stay down! His voice no longer sounded human. Evelyn lifted her head. Roman's eyes burned molten gold. His teeth had lengthened. Dark claws pushed from his fingers as his body expanded beneath his suit. Another explosion rocked the building. The ceiling cracked. Dust poured down. Roman crouched over Evelyn, shielding her with his body as bullets struck the reinforced outer wall. Are you hurt? My laptop. Are you hurt? My calculations were on that laptop. Roman gripped her shoulders. Evelyn. She blinked at him. No. His hands moved over her arms, her neck, her face, checking for blood. His claws had retracted just enough not to cut her, but the restraint visibly cost him. A roar shook the corridor outside. Not Roman's. Another alpha. Roman's head snapped toward the door. The scent of enemy wolves flooded the headquarters, mixed with smoke, cordite, and fresh blood. His face changed. The controlled businessman vanished. The Alpha King remained. Rival syndicate, he said. Evelyn pushed herself upright. Which one? The Iron Fang. Are they registered as a legal entity? Roman stared at her. Gunfire hammered the corridor again. Stay here, he ordered. That was not an answer. He rose to his full height. Bones cracked beneath his skin. His shoulders widened until the fabric of his shirt split. Dark fur spread across his arms and throat. His jaw elongated, becoming something between man and wolf. Terrible and powerful. Claws curved from his hands like black knives. Roman's half-beast form was built for slaughter. He turned toward the door. Evelyn grabbed the back of his ruined shirt. He froze. Do not get blood on the tax files. Roman looked over his shoulder. A section of the corridor wall blew inward. 3 enemy wolves charged through the smoke. Roman met them before their boots touched the floor. He caught the first by the throat and drove him into the concrete hard enough to crack it. His other claw tore through the second attacker's weapon, shredding metal and sending the man crashing into a cabinet. The third fired. Roman twisted. The bullets cut across his shoulder. His roar made the remaining glass tremble. He seized the attacker and hurled him through the office door. Evelyn ducked as the body flew past. Roman glanced back at her. She was already crawling toward the broken laptop. Evelyn, I need the drive. Leave it. The final return is on it. The building is under attack. The deadline has not been suspended. Roman stared at her with an expression of raw disbelief. Then Mercer appeared through the smoke, his face bloodied and one sleeve torn away. They breached the lower garage, he said. At least 40 armed wolves. They have demolition charges. Roman stepped into the corridor. Seal the northern stairwell. Move administrative staff to the vault. Mercer nodded, then looked into the office. Evelyn was pulling the hard drive from the ruined laptop with a letter opener. Is she injured? No. Is she angry? Yes. Mercer looked almost relieved. Good. Another detonation ripped through the headquarters. The floor jumped. Somewhere beyond the corridor, expensive wood splintered. Evelyn stopped moving. Her head lifted. What was that? Roman listened. The West Reception Hall. The antique reception hall? Yes. The one with the imported mahogany conference table? Roman's eyes narrowed. Why? She stood. The red emergency lights flashed across her face. Because that table was valued at 200,000 crowns. A marble statue crashed somewhere in the distance. Evelyn's eyes widened. Roman recognized the expression. It was the same expression she wore when she discovered a properly documented deduction. She pulled out her phone. What are you doing? Recording. Recording what? The damage. She hurried toward the shattered window. Roman blocked her path. You are not leaving this office. I need visual evidence. Enemy wolves are shooting through the building and destroying depreciable assets. Evelyn? She stepped around him and raised the phone. The camera captured the shattered glass, collapsed ceiling, overturned cabinets, ruined electronics, and smoking crater where the east wall had been. Her face became radiant. Roman had seen her beautiful. He had seen her furious. He had never seen her delighted. This is incredible, she whispered. A rocket struck the corridor. Roman grabbed her around the waist and turned, taking the blast against his back. Fire rolled past them. The force drove him to one knee. Evelyn clutched his shoulders. Blood spread across his torn shirt. Her delight vanished. Roman! I am fine! You are bleeding! His claws dug into the floor as he rose. Stay behind me! Enemy wolves poured through the smoke. Roman moved. He became a blur of fur, claws, and elegant brutality. He tore the first rifle apart and drove its owner through a framed oil painting. He ducked beneath a blade, broke the attacker's arm, and flung him into an antique cabinet. The cabinet collapsed. Evelyn's eyes lit again. "Yes." Roman looked at her. She was filming. "Do that again." He stared at her over the body of an enemy. "Smash the furniture," she shouted. A bullet tore past her head. Roman roared and crossed the corridor in a single leap. He struck the shooter with enough force to send him through a decorative table. The table exploded into fragments. Evelyn pointed excitedly. "Perfect." Roman's blood-soaked face became utterly still. Mercer emerged from the stairwell, dragging an unconscious attacker by one ankle. "What is happening?" "Casualty loss deduction," Evelyn said. Gunfire thundered below. She raised her voice. "Property destroyed in a sudden, unexpected, externally caused event may qualify as a casualty loss. The rival attack establishes the triggering event. The security footage establishes timing. The asset register establishes adjusted basis." Briggs limped into the corridor carrying 2 weapons. He blinked at her. "What?" "We can deduct the destruction." A chandelier crashed in the reception hall. Evelyn laughed. It was the first time Roman had heard the sound. Bright, breathless, completely insane. His wolf went silent inside him. Then it surrendered. Not to her authority. To her. Evelyn turned toward Roman, gray-blue eyes shining in the emergency light. "Destroy more." Mercer looked at Roman. Roman looked at Evelyn. She pointed toward a row of antique display cases. "Those are fully documented." An Iron Fang attacker charged from a side corridor. Roman caught him, spun, and hurled him through all 3 cases. Glass and carved wood erupted across the floor. Evelyn made a sound of pure satisfaction. Something inside Roman broke. Weeks of restraint vanished. Every denied impulse, every midnight spent watching her organize his empire, every moment he had imagined placing his hands on her and claiming the attention she gave so freely to ledgers and regulations, surged through him at once. His alpha instincts burned through blood and bone. Mine. The word thundered through him. Not weak, not helpless, not prey. His equal. His impossible, brilliant, terrifying equal. More enemies flooded the hall. Roman smiled. It was a monstrous expression. Then he attacked. He moved with devastating precision, choosing angles that sent bodies through desks, cabinets, tables, and decorative partitions. He drove one wolf into a marble column and used another to demolish a row of imported chairs. Evelyn followed behind the security line, documenting everything. "Get the painting!" she yelled. Roman ripped the painting from the wall and wrapped it around an attacker before throwing him through a side table. "The bronze sculpture!" He kicked an enemy into it. The sculpture toppled and shattered the tiled floor. "Excellent!" Roman's devotion became feral. He massacred the invading force with the focused enthusiasm of a man performing home renovations for the woman he loved. Briggs watched him destroy a hand-carved conference table after the enemy beside it was already unconscious. Was that necessary? Roman glanced toward Evelyn. She gave him an approving nod. Yes. The Iron Fang Alpha appeared at the far end of the main boardroom. He was massive, gray-furred, and armored across the chest. Blood covered his muzzle. In one hand, he carried a curved blade. In the other, a detonator. "You have become weak, Vale," he snarled, hiding behind accountants and regulations. Roman stepped over the broken remains of his throne-like chair. Evelyn entered behind him, still filming. The rival Alpha laughed. "Is that your little human?" Roman's claws extended. The temperature seemed to drop. Evelyn looked past the enemy toward the boardroom. The mahogany table remained intact. Her expression hardened. "That table has no remaining book value," she said. Roman turned his head. "Fully depreciated?" "Completely." The Iron Fang Alpha frowned. Evelyn lowered the phone. "Destroy it." Roman crossed the room like a released storm. The enemy lunged. Roman caught the blade in one clawed hand, snapped it, and drove his shoulder into the rival Alpha's chest. They crashed onto the table. The mahogany groaned. The rival struck Roman across the face. Roman answered with a blow that split the tabletop. Evelyn stepped closer. More! Roman seized the alpha by the armor and slammed him down again. The table collapsed. The sound echoed through the headquarters. Roman stood in the wreckage, blood running down his chest. His claws locked around the rival's throat. The Iron Fang Alpha reached for the detonator. Evelyn kicked it away. He stared at her. She stared back. You failed to retain proof of purchase for the explosives, she said. Amateur. Roman threw him through the last intact wall. Silence followed. Not complete silence. The alarms still screamed. Fires crackled. Injured men groaned. Water poured from broken pipes. Somewhere downstairs, Briggs shouted that his lunch had been destroyed. But the assault was over. Roman stood among the ruins, breathing hard. Blood covered his half-beast form. His golden eyes fixed on Evelyn. She slowly lowered her phone. For the first time since the attack began, she seemed to understand what stood before her. Not the tailored executive who brought coffee receipts. Not the Alpha King who allowed her to confiscate company cards. A predator. A blood-soaked monster built to destroy armies. Roman moved toward her. Mercer quietly ordered everyone out. No one argued. Evelyn remained still as Roman crossed the ruined boardroom. He stopped, inches away. His massive chest rose and fell. Blood traced the hard lines of his body. His claws were still extended. You told me to destroy my headquarters, he said. For tax purposes. I killed men for you. They were attacking us. I broke tables to make you smile. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Roman heard it. His eyes burned brighter. She lifted her chin. The deductions may legally reduce taxable income to nearly zero. I do not care, her breath caught. Roman raised one clawed hand and placed it against the shattered wall beside her head. He leaned down until his face hovered close to hers. I do not care about the income. That is financially irresponsible. I do not care about the furniture. Most of it was insured. I do not care about the filing. You will tomorrow. A growl rolled through him. This one was not anger. It vibrated through Evelyn's body. Roman's other hand closed around her waist, pulling her against the blood-warmed strength of him. You stood in a battlefield and ordered me to destroy things for your tax strategy. It was a legitimate casualty event. You laughed while I tore apart an army. The timing was advantageous. You are out of your mind. Evelyn looked into the eyes of the monster holding her. Your taxable liability is now manageable. Roman's restraint shattered completely. He lowered his forehead to hers, claws flexing against the wall. My empire was chaos until you walked into it, he said. My men fear you. My accounts obey you. My enemies destroy themselves around you. His grip tightened. And I cannot look at you without wanting to put every part of this city beneath your control. Evelyn's phone slipped from her fingers. It landed in the ruins of the table, still recording. Roman's mouth hovered over hers. Finish the return, he growled. Then we are going to discuss what you have done to me. Evelyn's breath trembled. Behind them, a damaged section of ceiling collapsed onto an antique cabinet. She looked past Roman's shoulder. Her eyes brightened. Additional structural loss. Roman closed his eyes. Then the Alpha King began to laugh. Roman's laughter followed Evelyn through the ruins of the boardroom and into the longest night of her professional life. The headquarters still burned in 3 places. Security teams dragged captured Iron Fang wolves into reinforced holding rooms. Emergency crews fought leaking pipes, electrical fires, and the catastrophic consequences of Briggs attempting to operate an industrial extinguisher without reading the instructions. Evelyn ignored all of it. She reclaimed the least damaged office, connected the recovered hard drive to a replacement computer, and finished the tax return. Roman remained near her. He had shifted back into human form before dawn, though trace of the beast clung to him. His dark shirt was torn at the collar. Fresh bandages crossed his shoulder and ribs. Blood stained the cuffs of his trousers. And a dangerous golden light still flickered behind his eyes whenever anyone came too close to Evelyn's desk. No one came close twice. At 11:38 the following night, Evelyn entered the final casualty loss schedule. The damage was extraordinary. The east wall required complete reconstruction. The reception hall had lost antique furniture, artwork, lighting fixtures, and most of its imported stonework. 3 executive offices were unusable. The boardroom table had been reduced to pieces too small to identify without the asset photographs. Every destroyed item had an acquisition record. Every acquisition record had an adjusted basis. Every adjusted basis had been matched to photographic evidence, security footage, insurance documentation, and third-party repair estimates. Evelyn had never seen such beautifully documented destruction. Mercer stood behind her with a stack of signed statements. "Security logs," he said. "Place them on the left." He obeyed. Briggs entered carrying another folder and an ice pack against his forehead. "Facilities report. Left." He placed it beside Mercer's stack. Calder arrived with the updated equipment inventory. Evelyn held out one hand. He gave it to her without argument. The men remained in the office, watching the clock. Roman stood by the shattered doorway with his arms folded. He had been silent for nearly an hour, but Evelyn felt his attention on her with the pressure of a physical touch. At 11:56, she completed the final reconciliation. At 11:57, she reviewed the electronic declarations. At 11:58, she entered the authorization code. At 11:59, Evelyn clicked submit. The computer paused. No one breathed. A loading symbol rotated on the screen. Briggs whispered something that sounded like a prayer. Then a confirmation notice appeared. Return accepted. Evelyn leaned back in her chair. The room remained silent for one stunned second. Then Briggs shouted. The headquarters erupted. Men who had faced bullets without flinching began cheering in the corridors. Mercer struck Calder on the back, hard enough to move him 2 feet. Someone opened a bottle of expensive liquor, only for another enforcer to yell that it had not been approved for corporate use. Evelyn checked the confirmation number. "The return has been accepted for processing," she said. "That does not mean the Federal Tax Authority has completed its review." The cheering softened. "But," she continued, "the filing is timely, internally consistent, fully supported, and legally defensible." Mercer nodded. "Meaning?" "Meaning the casualty loss deductions reduced taxable income to almost zero." The cheering returned twice as loud. Briggs grabbed Calder in a violent embrace. Calder shoved him away. Evelyn raised her voice over the noise. Shadow Logistics will still owe payroll assessments, licensing fees, and several corrected withholding balances. No one cared. You must retain all supporting records for the statutory period. A chair flew through the corridor in celebration. Evelyn closed her eyes. That chair was not damaged in the attack. The corridor became quiet. A moment later, someone carefully placed it upright. Roman never looked away from her. She had saved him millions. That was how his attorneys would describe it. They would praise the corrected filings, the protected assets, and the liability she had eliminated through disciplined analysis. But Roman knew the truth was larger. Evelyn had walked into the darkest machinery of his world and imposed order without surrendering a single part of herself. She had not tried to cleanse him through innocence or soften him through fear. She had simply looked at his chaos and demanded records. She had taken the sprawling, violent empire he carried alone and made its hidden weight visible. Then she had helped him carry it. Roman had spent his life believing power meant never needing anyone. Evelyn had proven that belief was only another badly classified liability. The celebration lasted until sunrise. By 8, the surviving administrative staff returned to work. By 9, Evelyn issued a damage documentation policy. By 10, she rejected 3 claims from employees who had attempted to add personal belongings to the casualty schedule. One assassin claimed the attack had destroyed a luxury watch. Security footage showed him removing it before the first explosion. Another claimed 4 tailored suits. He had been wearing one and had left the remaining 3 at home. Briggs submitted a claim for emotional damage to his lunch. Evelyn denied it without review. By noon, the emergency had passed. The wounded were stable. The captured attackers had been transferred to syndicate custody. Repair teams moved through the headquarters, cataloging damage beneath Calder's terrified supervision. Evelyn returned to her temporary office for the final time. Her work was complete. She shut down the computer, removed her personal files, and packed her calculator into her briefcase. Her coffee cup followed. Then her pens, her reading glasses, and the small metal ruler she had used to align the labels on Roman's filing cabinets. She paused beside the desk. For weeks, the room had been hers. She had complained about the poor lighting, the inadequate storage, the unstable network, and the disturbing number of concealed weapons. Now the office felt strangely quiet. A clean copy of the accepted return rested on the desk. Beside it lay Mercer's first perfectly completed expense report, which Evelyn had retained for reasons she refused to examine. She closed the briefcase. The sound was final. Evelyn told herself that was good. A completed engagement should have a definite ending. Scope established. Services rendered. Deliverables submitted. Final invoice issued. Order depended on boundaries. She lifted the briefcase and turned toward the door. Roman stood there. He had changed into a fresh black suit. The bandage at his shoulder disappeared beneath the fabric, though the rigid way he held one arm revealed the wound had not fully healed. His face was composed, devastatingly handsome and completely unreadable. Only his eyes betrayed him, gold burned beneath the dark irises. "You are leaving," he said. "The engagement is complete." "No." Evelyn adjusted her grip on the briefcase. That was not a question. It was not an acceptable answer. You cannot reject the completion of professional services. Roman stepped inside. The door closed behind him. Evelyn watched his hand leave the handle. "Roman!" He turned the lock. The quiet click traveled through her. Outside, drills, hammers, and shouted repair orders filled the headquarters. Inside the office, the air became unnaturally still. Roman moved toward her. Evelyn held her ground. "I have submitted the returns," she said. "Your records are organized. Your procedures have been corrected. The immediate risk of asset seizure has been eliminated. You forgot something. I do not forget things. You know too much." She stared at him. Roman continued walking. "You know where the money moves. You know which entities are connected. You know the identities of vendors, officers, beneficiaries, and internal account holders. I am bound by professional confidentiality. Confidentiality can be challenged. Not easily. A federal court can compel testimony." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" "No." Roman stopped in front of her. He was close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. The alpha energy rolling from him was dark, possessive, and almost painfully intense. "I am closing a vulnerability," he said. "A vulnerability." "You!" Her fingers tightened around the briefcase handle. "That is not flattering. It was not intended to be. What exactly are you proposing?" Roman reached out and took the briefcase from her. Evelyn resisted for half a second. He lifted one eyebrow. She released it. Roman placed the case on the desk behind her. "You can be subpoenaed," he said. "Yes, you can be ordered to answer questions under certain circumstances. You can be forced to disclose communications relevant to criminal activity. That depends on privilege, scope, jurisdiction, and the nature of the engagement. Accountant-client privilege is limited." Evelyn became still. Roman's mouth curved. "You researched this." "I hired 6 attorneys." "6?" 3 disagreed with the other 3. "That is normal. So I hired 4 more." Evelyn blinked. "You hired 10 attorneys to determine whether I could be compelled to testify?" "I hired 10 attorneys to make sure you never could." A strange warmth moved beneath her ribs. She suppressed it. "What did they conclude?" "That professional privilege is inadequate." "I could have told you that." "I did not want your answer." "Why?" "Because you would have chosen the solution with the fewest complications. That is generally the correct solution." "Not this time." Roman placed both hands on the desk, one on either side of her. He did not touch her. He did not need to. His body surrounded hers, caging her between 6 feet 4 inches of alpha power and the desk she had claimed as her own. Evelyn's heartbeat accelerated. Roman heard every beat. His pupils widened. "There is another privilege," he said, his voice dropping into a low, husky rumble. She knew before he said it. The knowledge struck her with such force that her mind, usually capable of processing hundreds of variables at once, emptied completely. Roman leaned closer. "Spousal privilege." Evelyn stared at him. Outside, something heavy crashed. Neither of them reacted. "You cannot be serious. I have never been more serious. Marriage is not a legal device for obstructing testimony. It is not only that. You just presented it as a compliance strategy. I knew you would appreciate the legal logic. I appreciate logic. I do not appreciate being ambushed with matrimony." Roman's gaze dropped to her mouth. "You appreciated the battle. The deductions were legitimate. You told me to destroy a wall. It had a favorable adjusted basis. You watched me tear apart 40 enemy wolves and smiled. You were producing useful evidence. You belong in my world." Evelyn's breath caught. Roman's voice softened, but the alpha force behind it deepened. "You walked into this headquarters when every instinct should have told you to run. You looked at my men and saw employees who needed receipt policies. You looked at my weapons and demanded inventory schedules. You looked at me and saw a man who had failed to renew an insurance policy. You had. You were furious. It was negligent. You cared about the financial consequences. Liar." The word was quiet, not cruel, almost tender. Evelyn's defenses shifted. Roman lifted one hand from the desk and touched a loose strand of hair beside her cheek. His claws were gone, but she remembered them against the broken wall. She remembered his blood on her hands, his body shielding hers, and the terrifying devotion with which he had destroyed his own furniture simply because it made her happy. "You think this is about secrets," he said. "It is not." "Then why mention them?" "Because you trust numbers more than feelings." "Numbers are verifiable." "So am I." He moved closer until his chest brushed hers. Evelyn's palms pressed against the desk behind her. "I have verified nothing. You verified that I followed every procedure you imposed, with resistance. I packed lunch. Mercer packed lunch. You took his. He made 2. You paid an undocumented cleanup fee. I reimbursed it. You allowed the insurance policy to lapse. I fired Briggs from insurance oversight. You broke a fully depreciated table. You ordered me to." Her lips almost curved. Roman saw it. The dangerous intensity in his face softened into something that threatened her far more than dominance ever could. Hope. The Alpha King of Obsidian City was looking at her with hope. Evelyn had balanced accounts worth billions. She had traced fraud through layered corporations and reconstructed ledgers from fragments. She had never encountered anything as terrifying as being trusted with someone's hope. Roman reached toward the desk. Her calculator sat beside the accepted return. He placed one finger against it and slowly pushed it toward her. Something rested on the display. A diamond ring. The stone was enormous, flawless, and clear enough to catch every fractured beam of light entering through the damaged window. It was set in a simple band of dark metal, elegant and powerful without ornament. Evelyn stared. "Do you have a receipt?" Roman's laugh came out rough and low. "Yes." "Independent valuation?" "Yes." "Proof of lawful purchase?" 3 copies. "Insurance?" "Active as of 6 this morning." She looked up at him. He was smiling now, not the cruel smile of a king confronting an enemy, not the feral smile of a beast unleashed in battle. This smile belonged to Roman alone, a man standing before the only woman who had ever seen every weakness in his empire and remained. He lifted the ring from the calculator. "This is not reimbursement," he said. "What is it?" "A contract. I have not reviewed the terms. Lifetime duration. That is excessive. No cancellation clause. Unenforceable. No transfer rights. Possessive. Exclusive access. Potentially anti-competitive. Unlimited renewal." Evelyn's throat tightened. "That is redundant if the duration is lifetime." "I wanted certainty." Roman took her left hand. His palm was warm and calloused. The same hand that had broken stone now held her fingers with extraordinary care. "The consideration is everything I have," he said. "My name, my empire, my loyalty, my body, every ugly secret, every dark corner, every part of me I have never allowed another person to touch." The comedy drained from the room. Evelyn looked at the ring, then at the man holding it. Roman's voice became quiet. "In return, you stay." Her chest ached. "That is not adequate contractual language." "Then write your own. You cannot demand a lifetime commitment because of testimonial privilege." "I am not." "Then why?" His golden eyes held hers. "Because you are the first person who ever brought order to me without trying to control what I was. You did not ask me to become harmless. You asked me to become accountable." Evelyn's eyes burned. Roman's thumb moved across her knuckles. "I have ruled through fear for so long that I forgot fear was not the same as respect. I thought strength meant carrying everything alone. Then you walked into my boardroom with a binder and showed me how much I had failed to see." His breath touched her lips. "You balanced my empire, Evelyn." Her voice weakened. "That is my job." "No, your job ended when the return was accepted." He lifted the ring. "This is what I am asking you to choose." Evelyn had built her life around certainty. Every number belonged somewhere. Every transaction needed support. Every imbalance had a cause that could be found if she worked long enough and looked closely enough. Love offered no supporting schedule, no clean reconciliation, no guaranteed return. It was an investment made without complete information, exposed to every possible loss. Yet Roman stood before her, offering no false safety. He was not pretending his world was gentle. He was not hiding the violence in his blood or the shadows in his empire. He was giving her the truth, unadjusted and unclassified, and trusting her to decide whether its value exceeded its risk. Evelyn turned her hand in his. Roman's expression tightened, as though preparing for rejection. She took the ring from him. Then she placed it in his palm. His face became stone. "You forgot the acceptance procedure," she said. He did not move. Evelyn held out her left hand. "Put it on properly." The Alpha King stopped breathing. Roman slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Evelyn looked at it once, then gripped his torn collar and pulled him down. Roman's restraint vanished. His mouth claimed hers with passionate, devastating possession. The kiss was not careful. It carried every night he had watched her work, every growl he had swallowed, every violent instinct he had chained because he wanted her choice more than her surrender. One hand closed around her waist and lifted her against him. The other cradled the back of her head, protecting, even as he consumed. Evelyn kissed him back with equal force. She tasted hunger, devotion, and the wild edge of the beast that had chosen to kneel only to her. Her fingers slid into his dark hair. Roman growled against her lips, pulling her closer until no space remained between them. The desk shifted beneath the force of his body. Evelyn broke the kiss. Roman's eyes blazed. "That desk is company property. I will reimburse it, with documentation. I will buy you a new one. Personally. Anything." He kissed her again. This time the possession softened into something deeper. A vow. When Roman finally lifted his head, his forehead rested against hers. "You will audit my heart forever," he murmured. Evelyn's lips curved. "Your heart has serious internal control deficiencies. You will fix them. I will issue recommendations. I will follow them. You rarely follow instructions. For you, I will learn." 6 months later, Shadow Logistics passed its federal tax authority review without adjustment. The examiner praised the casualty documentation, accepted the corrected classifications, and requested only minor clarification regarding the company's unusual increase in employee lunch containers. Briggs was forbidden from answering. The headquarters had been rebuilt with reinforced walls, modernized systems, and furniture Evelyn selected according to durability, replacement cost, and depreciation schedules. Roman hated the new boardroom chairs. He approved them anyway. Evelyn became chief financial officer, independent compliance director, and, after a private ceremony attended by 10 attorneys and 40 armed wolves, Roman's wife. Spousal privilege was never tested. No one was foolish enough to subpoena the Alpha Queen. Yet their marriage was not built on legal protection. It was built in smaller moments. Roman learned to save receipts without being asked. Evelyn learned that some expenses could not be measured by immediate return. He brought her coffee during late nights. She repaired his cufflinks before meetings. He protected her from bullets. She protected him from penalties, frozen assets, and catastrophic insurance exclusions. They argued about budgets. They compromised on weapons procurement. They never compromised on each other. Evelyn had once believed order was a perfect spreadsheet in which every figure aligned and every uncertainty had been eliminated. Roman taught her that a life without uncertainty was not necessarily balanced. Some values could not be entered into cells. The safety of his arms around her after midnight. The trust in his eyes when he handed her another hidden ledger. The quiet way the most feared man in Obsidian City rested his head in her lap, surrendering the weight of his crown because he knew she would never use his vulnerability against him. Those things had no recognized accounting treatment. They were still real. Roman had once believed darkness was his natural kingdom, and chaos, the price of power. Evelyn brought light into that darkness, not by erasing it, but by standing inside it with him. She examined every shadow, named every risk, and refused to let disorder disguise itself as strength. In return, Roman showed her that perfection was not the same as peace. True order was not found in flawless columns or perfectly balanced totals. It was found when two imperfect lives met and became stronger in combination. It was the discovery of someone whose courage offset your fear, whose wisdom corrected your blindness, and whose love transformed every hidden liability into something worth carrying. A soul had its own ledger. It recorded wounds no document could prove, debts no money could repay, and acts of devotion too vast for any ordinary measure. When that ledger finally balanced, it did not produce silence. It produced laughter in ruined boardrooms, coffee beside midnight spreadsheets, a diamond resting on a calculator, and two people standing together at the center of a chaotic world, each bringing light to the places the other had believed would remain dark forever. If you enjoyed this steamy, hilarious, and thrilling paranormal romance audiobook, please hit the like button and subscribe for more epic stories.